Hey, I'm Mitch.
And I'm Greg, and this is Sidenote,
a podcast where every episode we tell stories about and then debate a controversial topic.
And then we research and splice in all the science and mind-blowing information throughout so you are entertained while simultaneously learning. The Side Notes today will be presented by Rachel.
Hey friends, let's get into it.
Today we are doing things a little bit differently. With me in the booth is a guest host named Matt Rogers, who is one half of the amazing podcast called Las Culturistas. He does it with his friend Bowen Yang. It's a hilarious podcast. In fact, sometimes it's even insightful and can bring a tear to your eye, okay? They talk about pop culture. They have celebrity guests, comedian guests. We are obsessed with this podcast, so make sure you check it out. Subscribe to it. It's called Las Culturistas. That's L-A-S, like Las Culturistas. They also are really good at talking about queer culture, which is why we thought it was important to have Matt Rogers on today's episode as we speak about the gay hookup app Grindr. Matt and I are going to talk about what we learned this week. We're then going to tell stories about our experiences with Grindr, and then we're going to get into a debate about whether or not we think this type of social media is good or bad for society. And just a warning, we are going to be talking about sex a lot on today's episode, so if for whatever reason, maybe you're in the car with children or something like that, and you think that maybe this won't be appropriate, then switch on over to Las Culturistas. That's a great idea. And laugh and cry and enjoy. Hey, Matt.
Hi, Greg.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm very happy to see you in my nation.
Yeah, nice fresh shirt.
Thank you so much. I guess I should just say a little plug right now. I am wearing a shirt from Everlane. I love my sponsor, Everlane, on my pod, Las Culturistas.
They're not paying us yet, but we'd love
No,
one.
but you know what? Here's how you put it into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You have me come on and spill the true tea, which is that this clothing is 100% ethical.
Wow, and
It's
it
made
looks
from
great.
recycled fabric.
It's a rugby tee. It's like, is that dark green? What is that? It's very winter.
It's a dark olive.
A dark olive, exactly. Wow, of course.
Honestly, and here's the thing. It's like, I don't know when this will come out, but it just got unseasonably cold in New York.
I was excited to be here for the first snowfall. People were freaking.
It was not...
Phones were out.
It was not a chaotic moment. I have to say one thing. I feel that we are the same energy.
Oh my
and
God,
so
yeah,
sometimes
I know.
I feel like maybe I should try to give a Mitchell energy.
I know, and it's like both.
But it
yeah.
can't be.
Well, they can be. Yeah, this is just going to be loud. Turn your volume down.
I was like, you know what, honey? We're going to be peaking because it's me and Greg.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, before we get
Chaotic
into... Chaotic good, and that... Whatever that thing is. I still don't really understand what that is.
I don't get it either. I just know what I am.
Oh, what did we learn this week?
So a new study came out.
Okay.
They took 500,000 people, and through 23andMe, they studied their genes. But also, of these 500,000 people, they asked them who has had sex with the same sex. So this means it's not necessarily people who identify as gay. They could be bisexual. They could be identify as straight and have had sex with the same sex
Did they
once.
have a moment?
Did they have a moment? Was college the time?
Yes.
Like,
Did you switch it up?
Yeah, exactly. So
In a moment.
So, but you can also expect that there would be a lot of openly gay people in this category too. And then they found that there were 4 specific gene variants amongst these people. So they're starting to study about how genes and like being gay interact. They also found that there was higher incidences of anxiety and depression, but they can't link that to genes because maybe like people who are likely to have had sex with the same sex might be discriminated more or something like that. But it's still a lot of tension in the science community about whether or not we should do this type of research, because obviously like queer people have been left out of science for a long time, but also there's parts of the world where being gay is literally illegal.
Yeah.
And like, what do you think? Like, do you want this type of research to be done as like a gay person in 23andMe and like
what I think
future?
is like it's I don't know if there's going to be necessarily a way to scientifically nail this down, because I also think you'd have to take a lot into account, which is like when you're talking about stress levels in relation to us talking about this, you have to also understand that like someone who has had a gay experience or has gay experiences, like their mentality about sex is forever different from someone who grew up and was raised heterosexual from the very beginning. So it's like I think that the stimuli and like measuring people's anxiety and like responses emotionally to these kinds of things, it's like we exist as 2 almost different kinds of human beings. When you are someone who has an instinct to hook up with same-sex individuals, or like if you have an instinct to hook up with the same sex, say that, I feel like you are conscious of the fact that that's like a quote unquote bad impulse,
especially when you're younger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think we live for a long time with a certain degree of fear and discomfort. And I feel like that's the answer right there almost.
Yeah.
It's like any sort of like same-sex urge is going to be accompanied by shame.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think
Because of the culture.
Yeah, because of the culture. And I think that's the scary thing about it. Like when we're jumping the gun to start studying genetics and being gay, I'm kind of like, let's slow down and study some other things first. Like we don't need to be like brought into science like for this right off the bat.
Right. I understand wanting to know because I think all information like is good information, but also it's like I sometimes get a little nervous when it comes to like when we procure this information, what do we do with it? You know what I mean? This thing of going down the road, it's like, does this kind of mean there's going to be some sort of genetic targeting or modulation later on about people who don't want gay children or LGBT children? It's like, while I think like it's always great to kind of know exactly the genesis of things, and like it's always great to ask the question why if you can find an answer, and sometimes even if you can't, it just, maybe this is the cynical part of me, but it's like, what exactly are we trying to get this information for?
And I totally agree. And like, why should we trust institutions at all? #history. Like, yeah, I totally
100%.
agree, but it's happening.
It is happening, honey.
Okay, what did you learn this week?
Okay, so actually today I was watching The View, as I am wont to do. I famously watch The View every single day
because you need to mix up your views.
I love to see 5 different views from the 5 cast members, and they're talking about how overall people are having less sex. Like millennials, like the rates of sexuality and like expressing yourself sexually when they asked like a certain amount of people, and they said they had not had sex or had a desire to have sex less. So it's very interesting to me. I think especially like in Asia, when you look at like the not fertility rates, but just the rate of people getting pregnant,
it's
like
an issue there because they don't have enough kids to keep the economy alive. Yeah.
And so this was something that I guess that like started a sort of a like sexual phenomenon or asexual phenomenon, if you will, in Asia, especially in Japan. I think Tokyo is like the most sexless city in the world.
Wow.
Major city anyway, but it's sort of right.
There's a small town somewhere that's fully sexless.
They're not fucking a lot in Cairo either. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I don't know that information. I forget that your podcast is like actual scientific information and mine is full bullshit. Right. So, but I should say that I kind of understand this thing of like the millennial generation having less interest in sex, because I think that the social media thing, I mean, I know I'm personally very susceptible to it, and I know we're going to talk about it today in the topic at large, but it can kind of get you in your head. It can kind of get you feeling like the standards of beauty are really high and like sort of what
makes unattractive almost.
Exactly.
Wow.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you go on to like, I mean, anything where the standard of beauty is going to be forced in your face at all times is going to have you fixed on that. And I think social media knows what gets people to click. And I think people do think with their sexual organs.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, again, this is like, there's so many factors too. Like even something like porn is like, there's so much easy access to that. Like maybe that could contribute like, like we now have so many different ways
of getting off,
pleasuring ourselves, literally, that like I don't know what kind of impact that could have, but it's interesting to know that people are having less sex, because I think without knowing that information, I would have thought the opposite.
You would think because we live in such a world that revolves around sex, like, sex is happening everywhere. But if you really think about it, it's not unbelievable to assume that because you're seeing the physical perfection around you at all times, especially based on people you follow, etc., things like that, that you would feel discomfort in your own skin. And when you combine that with the ease in which you can just find sexual gratification with porn, with just talking to someone online, etc. So these things kind of would go hand in hand to make me believe that it's true that millennials are having a lot less sex.
We're just too busy reading books.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm not reading any books.
Watching The View. We're too busy watching The View. I'm
watching The View, and like, should I be fucking instead? Maybe. Maybe.
We'd be happier.
I think I'd be happier overall.
Story time. Story time. Story time. Story time.
So today we are talking about Grindr. Grindr.
Yes.
Okay, don't get it twisted.
Atypical spelling. Not like the Rob Lowe sitcom, which was called Grindr. Grinder. He was in a show on television called The
Recently?
Grindr. And I'm like, see, when it was like 2-3 years ago. I was like, when I think about Rob Lowe and Grindr, my mind goes in one area.
Yes, for sure. Like, did no one consult on that?
I don't know.
It was called The Grindr? Maybe they thought that was good
Grindr, and I was like, I don't know.
God.
There's a whole population that's only going to think think one thing.
And like some gay people do say, are you on the Grindr?
Yeah, right. The Grindr.
Okay, so Grindr is an app that uses GPS technology. I literally looked up how people wrote Grindr. I was like, I've never thought about it like this.
Yeah, like what exactly it is.
They said Grindr uses GPS technology to display a grid of men nearby. And when you click on said picture of this man, a profile comes up of which there is a photo and some information, some like, what
Sexual
are some of the
information,
acronyms? DTF.
Yeah, like down to fuck. Well, basically, then you can fill out your profile and they ask you what, this is problematic, but they ask you what your tribe is.
Yeah.
Or like what you're looking
Weird
for, what
word.
you're interested in. You can click like looking for right now, looking for a relationship, looking for dating, looking for just friends.
But in general, and like the idea of Grindr, I think a lot of people would say it is about sex. It's more about sex than maybe other apps.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going on there to have sex, you're in the minority.
Yeah,
people
I
are
agree.
on Grindr. Gay men are on Grindr, or you know, whoever you are, the queer populace is on Grindr to find people to connect with sexually in their immediate area.
In their immediate area, like it could be feet away. It could be feet
And,
away.
literally, that's how they measure it. It's like this person is
It's like
4,000 feet away.
I know, not the metric system. Interesting.
It's so funny how this is like something we accept, and then you're talking about it, and you're like,
It
"This sounds crazy."
I know, because I'm literally listening like through the perspective of people who aren't used to this, and they're probably like, "That's horrifying."
Yeah.
But okay, so we're going to be telling stories right now about Grindr. So I'm going to go first.
Okay.
So I think it's important to know we talked about it on the relationship before. Talked about it on the podcast before, but Mitch and I are in an open relationship.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like been something that has, I don't know, we've been in this open relationship for long enough that it feels like, not like it's not interesting to talk about, but I remember the time when we first started to do it that I wanted to talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
And now I feel like when people ask me
I've
about
been
it,
there.
I'm a little bit more like, oh wait, like it's so interesting to me. Like one thing I've always thought, and I think people ask me about jealousy and things like that, which I think were valid at the beginning of it, but, and this is like through a therapist, everything interesting is through a therapist, was just saying that like, getting married puts so much pressure on a relationship that it
Yeah.
can be so detrimental that sometimes being in an open relationship, or even just like having that willingness to allow your partner to just like know that there could be other options, can keep that relationship going. And like,
Yeah.
I think that's so true. Like me and Mitch spent all of our time together. It's not a really big deal in our relationship at all, but it is like, so I'm like, if he fell in love or like something happened and he, you know, built a relationship with someone else, I would want to know that. Like having
Yeah.
affairs, all these things happen all the time, not necessarily to just straight people, but I really think open relationships aren't for everyone, but it's important to know that monogamous relationships aren't the be all end all, and
So
there's
can
so
I-
much negativity.
Can I ask you a
Yes.
question about it? How you guys have been together like a decade?
Literally about to be 11 years. Yes.
Okay, about to be 11 years. How long have you been open?
So that's the thing. Like I taught in the UK for a while, so we were like physically
You were
separated.
physically
So it was
far
kind of
away.
like that made sense.
Right.
And then it's sort of, since it's almost like, yeah, I guess we've been open for like 4 years or something. But that's the thing. It's so funny because our lives are so intertwined that maybe it's just that like, obviously like we don't talk about it that much, but we still do talk about it. And it can be
Right.
really an exciting part about a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was in one as well, and there were times when it was actually something to connect over. Most of
Yeah.
the time, it wasn't right for us, and it kind of just made us jealous, and I think uglier versions of ourselves.
But jealousy, as someone who's been in a really long term, this will be about Grindr. This is just me trying to explain why I know about Grindr. Jealousy is in a certain amount is a really important thing for a relationship. Because if you don't have that, I think that that's when you start to hear about these relationships that kind of just like, I don't know, like they
Get
become complacent.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like it's not like, obviously you don't want to feel jealousy all the time, but I think it's another emotion that we have said is only negative.
Right.
But no, there's something exciting about that. You want to be attracted to your partner, and
Yeah.
sometimes that can help.
I know you're going to get to your story, but I
But
find
it was
myself
so
having
interesting.
so many questions about it. Like I want to know like how much you guys act on it. Like, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We are in such a unique position that we don't act on it very much because we're always together.
you're always together.
We're always together. We're always, and I'm not seeking it out a lot, and I know that he isn't either. We're in such a solid relationship that
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like a little bit different. It's more like, you know, if something happens, it's not going to be considered
The
cheating.
end of the
We can
world.
talk about it.
Right.
And it is also very you can have sex as a gay person without intimacy so easily.
It's very
And that's,
easy.
I think, the biggest thing for people is that intimacy, that like abandonment, that cheating, but like gay men
It's
like
not
it's like you're
that.
not finding intimacy. Like it's not like that, especially with Grindr.
And not to say that people like, you know, because I think that sometimes a thing that I sometimes like hear when people say that is like, as a gay man, I'm not going to find that intimacy. It's just too hard to find. Like there are lots of gay men out there who don't feel this way and don't want to connect with me maybe in the way that I do. I think that that's like, it's really, what we're saying is like, it's easy to have those kinds of connections and not feel like beholden in an intimate way.
Yeah.
It's
you
not
can still
that
find
like
intimacy.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And so
okay,
that's
true.
something I think because that's something that kind of makes me sad sometimes
Yeah.
or it made me sad in the beginning when I thought about like Grindr and how like when I started dating again and I was like, God, like is it going to be so hard to find someone who does maybe want to be monogamous with me for a time? Like does intimacy in the gay community not exist in a way that it
I don't think that that's true.
And neither
but
do
you
I.
can find non-intimate sexual relations very easily
in the gay community.
Yeah.
So I think that's like an important thing to say.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so my story is it's weird. So
I love that it's little and weird.
little and weird, like my Grindr. Okay, so I've had this obsession with the name Liam, like since I was a child. I always wanted to name my kid Liam. I was like, I wish my name was Liam. I remember when I was like young with like, I know, it was like part of my identity. Like I remember in grade 9, like hanging out with my girlfriends as you do as a gay kid and being like walking by stop signs and then being like, and being like, I'm Liam now. And I had like split personality Liam. So
I used to do that with the name Johnny.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you ever wait?
No, like I had a screen name that was Johnny Guy 99.
Yes. Okay.
It was really weird. Like I was obsessed with having a different name. That's so interesting.
I know. And maybe we can go into, this could be a side note where it's like, why do gay guys struggle and want to be a different person?
I don't know.
But
it was when I was like 9 though. You're right.
Yeah, it was like a weird, I don't know what it was.
Well,
it was
you
like,
were grade 9. Yeah.
Yeah. But same day.
A little older, a little bit weirder.
Same day.
Yeah.
So I wanted to like, I don't know, I had this weird relationship with this name. And so when Mitch and I started to be in an open relationship, we had already started ASAP Science. We were like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years into it. And so when I like got Grindr, I wanted to remain anonymous. Like Mitch, I think is okay with he's okay with being on Grindr or whatever. But like, even as just like a niche educational person, it just scared me so much. Right. So I chose the name Liam. So now like my Grindr profile is like this name Liam. And like, so whenever I do have like some sort of hookup, people will say like Liam, and I'm like living out my fantasy right now is like this like name that I've like always loved and wanted. And I think
they call you Liam.
They call me Liam, but the thing is, I wanted to name my kid Liam, and now I'm like, I think I ruined that because now all
your kid cannot share the name of your Grindr alter ego. I don't know.
But it was like a split decision that I made. I was like, okay, I have to think of a name. Of course, this is the one I'm going to choose. And now I'm like, yeah, I can't name my child after like the anonymous gay sex that I have. But but that's my story about Grindr is just that like, yeah, I've managed to tarnish my name and that I do choose to be someone else on it, which is like really weird.
I did a quick Google search of the hottest male names, and the first thing that came up was a totally scientific, totally legit BuzzFeed survey of the 100 hottest names for guys. The number 1, I kid you not, Liam. Psychologists have long uncovered that words convey symbolic ideas beyond their meaning. For example, if I were to describe 2 sets of squiggles to you, one of winding curvy loops and the other short jagged lines, which one would be a maluma and which one would be a taquette? Respondents overwhelmingly assigned the maluma as the loopy curvy squiggle and the taquette as the sharp design. This extends to our own names and how we are treated. For example, a study out of UCLA found that some names immediately aroused images of success, popularity, or kindness. Another study looked at 1,000 pairs of twin sisters where one twin was named Alex, a name that is ranked as being fairly masculine. The Alex in the pair of twins was twice as likely to study math and science at a higher level than her twin sister. So clearly, names can shape a lot about us and how we are treated. It is no wonder that for centuries we have been using pseudonyms, not only to protect our identity, but to create a new one. There isn't a lot of research on fake names and dating apps, but there is some research around fake Instagram accounts. Researchers have found that many teens have what are called finstas, where they can post pictures and feel less pressure to look perfect, and is a way to enjoy their interests privately without fear of being bullied or judged compared to on their real Instagram or Rinsta. Okay, someone tell me if that is what they're really called. Sometimes I feel like an old lady. If anyone's saying Rinsta, let me know. Anyway, what's in a name? Apparently, a lot.
Have you ever hooked up with someone who's known who you were from Las Culturistas?
No, I well, not from Grindr.
Okay.
Like, I find that, like, Instagram...
like in the community.
Like, Instagram DMing is now replacing
So you
Grindr
say
in a way.
that, you guys talk about that a lot on your podcast, that you think that that's, like, the new apps or whatever.
Well, it kind of is, because it's like when someone is speaking to you on Instagram, I feel like there's a reason.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Especially, like, they hear what we talk about on the pod, and they hear that we say, like, we go to our DMs. Like, so then
so
when you get messages after that...
So you specifically being, like with this podcast, it's, like, where you're seeing the most, like, action.
I think on Instagram, yeah. Well, Instagram's also my, like, drug of choice.
Okay.
Like, I'm not on Facebook anymore, and Twitter, I don't correspond on there. But Instagram is, like, I think where people can easily, like, that's the phrase, slip into your DMs pretty easily.
Slide into the DM.
And I'm not actively using Grindr right now. But I'm on it. Like, I checked it, like, recently.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm not, like, going out and, like, hooking up on it right now. Whereas, like, there was a time during my open relationship where I had first discovered it, because I didn't have Grindr before I started dating my ex. I got it when we decided to be open, because I had never been on Grindr.
Okay.
So I downloaded it when we were open, and I went crazy on it. This was like...
That's true. The dopamine.
Oh, it's like, whoa. And I was like, I can get this all the time. And then you run into problems, which I'll talk about in my story. Yeah. It was like... I'm going to say we were dating for like a year, and then I got Grindr.
Okay. But when was this in relation to now? How many years ago?
I'm going to say 2.5 years ago.
Okay. So
yeah.
Like pretty recent.
I was on it, like, and I was using it actively for like an 8-month period.
Okay.
During which time I hooked up with a lot of people. And
wait, can we go into your story?
My story is like, there was a week where I used it, and I think I hooked up with like 6 people in a week.
Oh, well, that's almost, that could have been one a day. But
it was
took
like,
Sunday off.
But I also think I hooked up with 2 people in one day once. Like, I was like being like the horniest little one.
Because that takes time.
And honestly, like, I don't know, I was just bouncing around, and I was like, wow, the fact that I'm being so promiscuous on this, like, and everyone else, I assume, that it was always just so rote. It was so by the numbers. Like, everyone was so used to doing this. I was like, I wonder if this is going to, like, potentially have a bad consequence for me in some way.
What the sheer amount of sex that you were
just
having?
the sheer amount. It wasn't even sex. It was, like, full-blown sex. And I always say,
like,
with
sheer,
gay guys, it's like, your sex is your sex. You know what I mean? If you're not, like, in somebody else at all
it's a lot
times,
of work. It's not always going to happen that way.
Please. Like, and that's another thing for people to understand is I think when gay guys say we had sex, it's like, that can just mean you, like, jacked off together.
Yeah.
Truly. But so I was having all these experiences, and I was like, I wonder if this will bite me in the ass. No pun intended. Got an STI.
Oh my God.
First one ever. First and only one ever.
Which one?
Yeah. Okay, so it was warts.
Okay. Wow. And
actually I went to a City MD. And
wait, what's that?
A City MD is like this thing in New York. It's sort of like a fast casual doctor's office.
Is it
crazy?
How does that work? As a place for free healthcare, do you pay like Visa? Like, what do you mean?
You
like,
basically pay a copay, so it's like a $20 situation every time.
Okay.
But if you have insurance, you can go use this.
Okay, so gotcha.
I happen to have insurance, thank God, and so I was able to go in there once things were acting up, and so I was something's going on, and it was a City MD, which is like I said, like the doctors are like in and out. They verbally and visually assessed me, and they were like, oh yeah, they told me I had herpes, and I was like, no.
They didn't test for it?
No, they didn't. They said, well, we're not going to test for it, or unless you want us to, but that's what it is. And I was like, okay, well, I'm really kind of upset, like, because it was herpes, which is what you have forever.
A big deal, yeah.
But then I went to a real doctor.
Okay.
Not for nothing. Not that they're not real doctors, but I went to a doctor right after that who did test me for it, and I did not have it. So it's like, I actually had I had warts, which you can get rid of and doesn't come back.
So was that a relief for you? Like, from
oh my God, a huge
perspective?
relief. And that's the thing is, like, I will say during that short period of time where I thought I had herpes, I actually was happy to like be able to do a lot of research on it because you really can keep herpes in check.
Yeah.
There's a huge stigma on it because you do have it forever. But usually it's like 2 or 3 breakouts a year, and like it's not usually a big deal for people.
Greg and Matt did an excellent job highlighting how STI infections continue to be stigmatized in our society. Either intentionally or unintentionally, people can still be rather judgmental about sex. The idea that STIs indicate particular moral, ethical, or sensible shortcomings remains so pervasive that it becomes a line of thinking that's so hard to avoid, even when the target of such stigma and negativity is ourselves. This can lead to further problems. A 2017 New Zealand study found that among young people, the stigma associated with STIs functions as a barrier to testing. Some participants in the study reported that they were worried about their reputation if someone saw them going for a test. Fearing a positive diagnosis, many folks decide that they'd rather not know their status at all. The issue is even more pronounced within the queer community, where folks can also face compounding stigmas regarding their gender identities and sexual orientations. These stigmas can induce feelings of shame and guilt that can contribute to mental illness. And not only can emotional and mental health issues lead to even more stigma, but they have been shown to increase the risk of harm from STIs as well. But at the end of the day, STIs are just infections that infect folks regardless of race, gender, or sexual orientation. Many are asymptomatic, meaning the only way to know if you have one is to be tested regularly. And lastly, they're incredibly common. Some, like HPV, infect more than half of the sexually active population. From generating feelings of shame and guilt to discouraging testing, it's clear that the stigma surrounding STIs does nothing but cause harm. So let's work together to eradicate stigma and shame once and for all.
And you know, people give things to each other, like it happens, like that's just the world we live in, like STIs are a reality. But you know, when you're facilitating a situation where strangers hook up, it's one thing. And then also the kind of social media aspect of it, of like comparing bodies and being able to block each other, and the language that gets used on Grindr. Like it's like once you
very anonymous too.
Oh yeah, once you steep yourself in it, it's pretty ugly.
Well, I'm gonna take the other side of Grindr, Matt. So we're gonna debate this out. But
Perfect.
I do think that's really interesting, and I think sexual health is so important. And it's true. It's like there is such a stigma around it, and I think it's so important that we like get rid of that for so many reasons. But it doesn't mean that sex doesn't come with risk always. And that's like I think an important thing to just always remember, that like it's so pleasurable and we need to talk about it. It needs to be in the open. We can't ignore it. Like I'm so happy that you were able to talk about that. But at the same time, like you're right, it still is a risky thing to do, especially a lot. And like anonymously, and so you just have to be careful.
Right.
And, like,
I mean, I consider myself still sex positive to this day, but it's just like that was like an experience where I was like, oh, the STIs aren't just something other people get.
And it happened to you in your life at a time when you were feeling a certain way, and that's totally valid. And like, yeah, I know it's just crazy because Grindr can easily be something that magnifies that.
Right. And then I went to my ex and I was like, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. I have an STI. And he was like, oh, I've had 3.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
that's
it's like,
true.
People don't talk about it, but it's like, you know, this happens to people.
Yeah, no, exactly. And they should talk about it more because it is so common. And then we have less freakouts. Then we're like, oh my God, herpes are cool. After this short break, when we come back, we're going to get into our heated debate about whether or not we think Grindr is a good or bad thing for society and for the queer community. We just want to take this time to thank you all so much for listening to this podcast and engaging with us online. And we just want to ask you again to make sure you subscribe, make sure you leave a comment and like it wherever you can, however you're listening to your podcast. That really helps with the algorithm so that other people see it. But again, we started this not that long ago. It was a project that we really wanted to do. We're having so much fun with it. We love interacting with you. We love making these podcasts. So we're just thrilled and excited to know that you're actually listening and enjoying them. So essentially, thank you. So we in the debate today are going to be talking about Grindr. I'm going to be taking the position that I think Grindr is a good thing.
And I will be taking the position that I think Grindr probably is something we could do without.
Yeah, with anecdotes galore we've already heard.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go first. I'm going to put 2 minutes on the clock and I'm going to explain.
Debate time.
Okay, so one thing that's really interesting about Grindr that I found out recently is that studies actually found that it is the most effective way at reaching the queer gay community about preventions of STIs. So they found that when they actually want to explain something like HIV prevention, which is like obviously still so important in our community, or like any sort of, whether or not it's something mental health wise, when they've tried, like they've literally done free HIV like vending machines on the streets, or like taking ads in the New York Times, and like nothing works when trying to click to a website, but when they put ads on Grindr, they get the highest influx of people actually using it for an educational purpose, which I thought was like really interesting. Also, there's this thing called homophily, which is something that's, I don't know if it's phily or philly, which is talked about a lot in our community, which is that, and they've studied that white men on Grindr will more likely hook up with other white men on Grindr.
They're homophiles.
Homophiles. Is that, yeah, okay. Whereas like other diverse races will hook up with diverse people. And that has created like a narrative, I think, in our community, like because of like the no fats, no femmes, like no Asians conversation that's come out of Grindr. Like visually, we've had to like almost see that and deal with it, like, whereas I think without Grindr it might have been something that like slowly brewed in the consciousness that people weren't actually attacking. So I think that it's true, and I think there's so much racism in the gay community that's been brought to the forefront because we've actually had to like experience it through Grindr. Also, I think about us as like privileged people in like big cities, because like after World War II, like gay people went to San Francisco, that created the big community there. Then there's LA, New York, Toronto, like that's where gay people gather, but not all gay people can do that. And I think Grindr can be a really amazing resource for people who are in smaller towns or not actually able to just like, when I walk around New York, I'm like, is everybody gay? And then lastly, what I'll say is that it's like legitimately a gay space. And I think now that gay neighborhoods are sort of like going away, it actually is a place where you can like log on and literally speak to other gay men, which I think at a time was more necessary, but doesn't exist as much anymore. Okay, yeah.
Wow.
Did that change your mind?
Honestly, you made some great points. And I feel I've actually made a lot of my points already. So we're going to see. And this is so interesting because you put us on a timer, and I'm used to being on a timer for my frenetic I don't think so, honey segment on my podcast. So I am good on a timer.
Okay. But also no pressure, because I know that you're like hearing, you're just like doing our podcast. But also we should say, like, if there's a weird energy in this audio, it's because we're in New York.
If there's a weird New York energy, or if there's an amazing New York energy, that's
like
why.
Taxi
You're in the Forever
outside.
Dog Podcast Network studio.
It's beautiful. It's warm. It's cozy. I'm not overheating in our weird ass place. Okay, so maybe 2 minutes, no pressure, and explain why Grindr is bad. How could you?
So basically what you said about no fats, no femmes, no Asians, and that being a thing that's existed in the community, and now that it's on Grindr and now that's become a narrative, now we can discuss it. That doesn't mean that people aren't now experiencing that, I think, on a magnitude that they never have before. I mean, I think that it's almost this situation of like, yes, we have Trump and that's bad, but didn't he get so many people to vote? It's like a chicken or the egg situation. Like, I don't know. I'd rather not people experience this kind of hatred online, because that's exactly what it is. It's hatred, it's racism, it's all these things. I do understand what you're saying. Now we can tackle this subject, and people are now being forced to talk about it. So I think you have a good point there. However, I am concerned about the language on there, and I think it actually contributes to a sort of like sexual humiliation before it even happens, and I don't think it can have people feeling good about themselves sexually. I think if Grindr is going to continue, I think that they need to make big changes. I think there needs to be some sort of like ban on hate speech in chatting. I think that there should be, not that they should watch it necessarily, but like, I don't know, maybe something where you can't say no fats, no femmes, no Asians in your profile or something like that. Or else the profile gets flagged or something. I think it's extremely harmful. I have a lot of concerns about, setting people up in strange environments when they can represent themselves as anything. They can catfish other people. This is something with dating apps across the board and in social media profiling, but especially when it comes to, you're going to essentially like lie to someone about who you are sexually, what kind of atmosphere they're going to be entering in a vulnerable way. I have a lot of concerns about that. Also, to be honest with you, just as someone who exists in the world and is susceptible to social media, going online and seeing perfect torsos all around me can make me think to myself, wow, if my body isn't perfect, what the fuck am I? And I do think it contributes to a sort of mental, emotional, and sexual deterioration and a bullying of oneself.
Wow. Okay. Good. These are the alarms going off. Good one.
That's my kind of like, I guess just to cap it off, I would say and I know my 2 minutes are up, but
No, we're gonna keep talking.
People were fucking for millions of
Yeah.
years before this thing, and I agree with you that there is community on there, but it also makes me sad that our community exists in that space.
So when you say you're susceptible to social media, what do you mean by that? Like,
what I mean by that is very simply that when someone is able to project a perfected image of themselves, or an image of themselves that is very distorted and may not exist, that
through
can be
Grindr
through
or
Grindr,
Instagram.
through anything.
The gay community, you mean talking about like buff? Like,
yeah, I'm
it's a
talking
thing.
about like, if you don't look this way, you're worthless,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be worthy of my attention. And sometimes I'll go on Grindr, and it'll just be like 50 torsos that are like perfectly ripped and have beautiful pecs and everything, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, I don't look like that.
Yeah.
And I think, wow, does everyone else look like that? And then you add that to the freaking laundry list of things that there are to worry about and beat yourself up for already as a gay millennial and like someone in this world who's trying to, have a good self-esteem and have a good level of confidence. Like, I think it contributes to a lot of depression, to be honest with you. And
Yeah.
it can make you feel very far away from everybody.
And also, even like they've done studies on the actual act of Grindr, and the whole experience is really interesting because it's the whole lead up to whatever sort of sex that you have. It involves like this weird. So one thing I would say the pro about it is that this weird conversation does lead to you explaining to the person the type of sex you want to have before you get there, which I think is a pro to Grindr. Like, you actually get to be like, this is what I'm sexually interested in. This is what I hope to have happen when I get there.
Yeah.
And I think it could be beneficial when it comes to like going home with someone from a bar and not knowing what's about to happen.
Oh yeah, I will say that I've had some of the best sex I've ever had after being on Grindr, because I've been radically honest about what I want, and they've been radically honest about what they want, and because you realize that you're going to be both on the same page, you get there and then you're able to do that.
Exactly, and I do think that that's really important. Like, a lot of sex is like, it can be weird. Maybe you're into something like specific, and you can actually find people on that within the community, which is really good. But another thing, to your point, I'm going to go back and forth right now because I think
we're both back and forth.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
We have both had to choose a side, but reverse. Well, sort of.
Yeah. But I truly am verse. But
ooh,
right?
good for you.
Right? Is that like I don't know.
I think I was verse in my early 20s, and now I just can't hop on dicks like I used to, Greg. Not at 28.
Oh my god, yeah, that's true. Again, there's a lot that goes into it. That's a different episode called anal sex.
Truly.
Yeah, but there's a lot of like, even with orgasms, like they're addictive. Like, literally the way that your brain reacts, like a dopamine release. It's like, it's really...
I'm addicted to this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I really think that that's an important thing that we all need to talk about in the age of being able to access sex so differently. Like, you just always have to be aware. Like you said, you had sex 6 days in a week. That is an amazing thing if that's something that you want, but it sounds like it was something that maybe you had lost control of a little bit. And people need to be aware that it's like similar pathways in your brain to cocaine and these other things. I'm not saying they're the same thing, but it's addictive.
Well, you can get addicted to anything.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, anything that gives you a positive response back, you can get addicted to. So
and I do think Grindr is like, I don't know, I feel for me, like any of the times, like, I've been traveling, like sometimes it's like, whoa, it's like a dark waste of time where the conversations that you have with other men on the platform are a lot of them very weirdly negative.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a weird microcosm that I think a lot of people can relate to, but then I'm sometimes like, is it just me having these weird ass conversations with torsos, or I don't know.
It's also like deciding you're gonna have sex with someone before you've been in physical proximity with them and like smelt them and like touched them or looked them in the eyes. Well, I feel like that's such a huge part of sex, like whether you're gonna connect to someone, like actually, because I could look at someone's picture online and be like, oh, I want to have sex with them, and then see them in real life and like, no. Meanwhile, there are people that I've been so attracted to in the moment, and I was like, I'm so surprised I'm like really attracted to this person, but I am, because sex and sexual attraction is not about aesthetics necessarily. It's about chemical connection.
Matt is totally right. So much of attraction is chemical, and when it comes to what turns us on, the nose really knows. Each one of us has a unique body scent, independent of the cologne and perfume we wear. This involves our HLA genes, or human leukocyte antigen genes, that control the makeup of bacteria on our skin, giving us our unique odor. They also are an important component of our immune system and help identify foreign objects like bacteria in our bodies. Here is what's interesting. You can tell who you will love, or rather lust after, by smelling their sweaty t-shirt. In a strange but fascinating study, researchers told 44 male students to wear a cotton t-shirt for 2 days in a row and to avoid cologne and strong-smelling soap, and then to seal it in a bag, close it up. Then those t-shirts were given to 49 women who then opened up the bag, took a big old smell, and then ranked the t-shirts 1 to 5. There wasn't one best-smelling male, but rather different favorites for different women. Women preferred t-shirts of men who had the most genetically different immune systems from their own. By sniffing our lovers, we can subconsciously determine who has different genes than ours, meaning if we have a baby together, we would be passing on diverse genes to our offspring, making a healthier baby. Research among queer couples is still new, but early studies are finding similar results. So, you know what they always say, when it comes to genes that control bacteria on our skin, opposites really do attract.
That's the void on Grindr.
That's the void. It's literally the unfillable thing. The void that Grindr will never be able to fill is like actual, genuine, I see you, you see me, we both feel this way. Let's do it. Animal attraction is not existing on Grindr.
I feel like anytime I've even ever been on Grindr and started to like become myself is when people just like stop talking. It's like so interesting. It's like, wait, what are you actually? It's like, are we all just like making this up? And that brings me back to your point about, I don't know, I want to talk more about this like body image thing, because I've heard you guys talk about it a lot recently, and I'm like, I don't know if it's like,
well, what is your picture on Grindr? Is it your face or is it your body?
Oh, it's my body.
Yeah.
But because I also don't want to show my face.
I get that.
But also my body isn't like sick or anything. Like, but then I guess that's interesting. Maybe that's why I haven't been on Grindr, but maybe that's why I get less messages. But it is.
I don't know. I mean, I can't say that, but it's just like, it's interesting to. Like, would you say the chief reason that you use your body as a picture is because
I would honestly say
you would say it's because you don't want to use your face. But well, people know who you are.
But like yeah, sure, like maybe. But that is the reason why I do it, and I would. But I wish I could put my face because I actually do think that.
Crazy.
Like
I do use my face.
Yeah, I know, and I wish that I could. And I think what I'm trying to say is like when you do meet people who are like super jacked on Instagram or whatever, are they not like also like suffering from the same types of things?
I think that everyone is in their own body and wakes up every day, and like I would say it's the rare person that looks in the mirror and says, I'm absolutely 100% happy here.
Yeah.
But I just think it's not really necessarily about what they feel about themselves. Like when you go on there as someone who's decided to log on to the app, it's like you are then seeing that. And I think it can just be a little bit disheartening when you think about your own self.
Yeah.
If you're someone who does look average or normal or like isn't like in tip-top physical shape, I just think like to be able to see a sea of people who are projecting perfection can be tough.
Yeah, and I guess that's like what Grindr really, you're right. Grindr is a great example of a negative aspect of this part of our community. But I just think when I see those people online, like whether on Instagram or even at a gay bar, I'm like, it is a bit of a red flag. Like I don't want to put too much like of my like energy into, I guess, comparing myself to people like that. But maybe that's just like my own journey. And I sometimes worry about like, you know what I mean? I'm like, there's so many hot different types of gay people, and I think people are embracing that more and more, that I am like, I worry about like, I don't know, putting all this like focus on people who are just like jacked. And like,
I will say
whatever.
this, I never even talk to the torsos online.
Yeah,
like, to the grind. No, I talk to the faces.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to hook up with someone that was just like only presenting their torso without a good reason. Like you seem to have a good reason.
Well, I mean, and I also like,
I bet if I messaged you, you would send a face pic.
Yes, I would. I would lead with the face.
You got to lead with the face. So the thing is, like, some people are just like, just a torso, and then you talk to them like, or I have in the past, and they're like, okay, cool, so come over. And I'm like, I haven't seen your face.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what you looked like.
Yeah.
And that's the part of it that's like, what?
Too.
Like, are you insane? Like, I would much rather like talk to a face and then they show the body, because I do love to trade pics.
Yeah.
I love trading pics.
He's free.
I
guess I think Grindr, like, I think there are positive aspects of it. I think without it, the gay community could like I don't know, who knows? Like, it's such an like huge, it's been such a huge impact on our ability to like have sex. And I think that sex has been also a really important, like freeing part of like being queer for a long time, that it has created like a weird, like, I don't even know if it's a good or bad thing, but I really feel like moving forward and like with Grindr, for the most part, I'm like, I think it is dark. Like, I think it's in a dark place.
It's dark.
And I don't think it's doing that much positivity.
But here's what I'd say. The gay reality is also dark.
Yeah.
And here's what I'd say. And it's like, we are two gay men having this discussion. And here's what I'd say to straight people who think that they can weigh in about their opinions on Grindr. You can't. Because, and I would say, let our community have this discussion and figure it out. Like, I sometimes will talk to straight women who are like, ugh, gay guys are so promiscuous. Or like, Grindr, I can't believe you guys just say what you want to do and then you go fuck. Like,
and
it's
like
so
straight
weird.
guys are like, you're so lucky that you can just go. Yeah.
And it's like antiquated on both fronts, because it's like women don't want to be slut shamed, but that's exactly what you're doing to us. And then also like there's this kind of ick factor around gay sex that heterosexuals like often I think have a blind spot to, the fact that they think it's gross.
Yeah.
But when they're saying like, oh, I can't believe you guys just do that, they wouldn't say that, I think, to their heterosexual peers.
So people said that to you?
Oh no, I mean like in
general.
In
like,
college, like I talked to one friend and she was being really kind of like nasty about Grindr and about just like gay promiscuity, and I'm like, you can go to any bar in this city and sit down, and if a guy comes up to you and starts talking to you, it's just normal, and you've never had to think about it. Yeah. We have select spaces in this city we can go to, and if a guy comes up and talks to me and starts flirting with me, it's normal. If I'm in a straight bar and a guy comes up to me and starts flirting with me, people are going to notice.
Yeah.
So your dating and sexual reality is so different than mine that you have no right to come in and judge how we decide to have sex and connect with each other.
And that's kind of that is an interesting part about Grindr. It makes me think of it more as a pro, because it is sort of like a necessary thing in some ways. And I think there's a lot of shame attached to even me, like with Grindr hookups. But it's like I think about how I've even had them and like wouldn't tell like like girlfriends, for example, if that's something I had just done that day or whatever. Right. But it's like, that is actually really interesting. Like, why do I feel that shame? And it is
because
probably
we have shame
so
attached to ourselves
like
anyway, and no matter what, which is just kind of a reality that we live.
And it's so important to think about through everything that we do, because it can be so helpful when you start to address it.
One of my least favorite things people say is like, I love that you're gay, but that's not the only thing about you. Or when people say, I'm gay, but it's not the only thing about me. That is bullshit. Yeah. You are gay and it's a huge thing about you. And if it were the quote unquote only thing or major thing about you, it wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
Your sexuality
so true.
dictates a lot about you. And I will say this thing of I'm gay, but it's not the only thing about me, or I'm gay, but it's not the main thing about me, is something that they want you to say. Mm-hmm. They put that sentence in your mouth through mainstream film and television, and it's not true. Or when someone says, you're gay and that's your business. It's like, you're straight and it's my business all the time. You know how many fucking times I have to read about Priyanka Chopra and Nick Jonas? Their sexuality, their relationship is my business. Fucking Brad Pitt, whoever he's ever dated over the past 20 years, has been my business down.
Yeah, no, that's
so don't
true.
tell me that like you're supportive of me, but also my business is my business, and etc. It's just like, you have to understand the way these things are harmful. And so when we're on something like Grindr, and this is why I'm also both ways on it, verse on this topic, is because it's like, we're gonna get ours the way we can get ours, because it's not as easy as it is for you.
That is like, I really think, an important part. And I think there's a lot of aspects of Grindr that are negative, and even thinking about Tinder versus Grindr and the way that it's designed, like Tinder, there is that mutual thing that has to happen first where you have to like swipe right.
Yeah.
And that's gonna actually, like, I'm sort of like Grindr.
It's consent.
Yeah. Why would you, like, eliminating that is what creates more hate speech, because they literally studied Tinder versus Grindr, and there's so much more hate speech on Grindr, and they were trying to figure out the software, and they're like, it's because Tinder allows this thing at the beginning to be like, okay, there's a mutual attraction, now we can start. Whereas Grindr, there's this like literal like
anyone can show you a picture of their asshole first,
and then people can have their opinion on you, and they can be racist, and they can be like, there are certain design flaws to it that I think could literally be fixed, that could make it a more positive thing for everyone. But you're right, I think gay sex is something that is always going to be one of the hardest things we have to deal with, the way that it's thought of by the public, by media. Like people literally just think it's gross and they don't want to talk about it.
Well,
and so then we end up in these, because it's buttholes, and we end up in these like maybe what I think of like literally the Grindr app as dark, like these dark places to find sex. But I wish I didn't have to think of it that way. And so I think, as much as like maybe it can create so much negativity for us and there's aspects of it that are problematic, there still maybe is a necessity for it for us in order to have like safe, free sex.
Right. The idea that gay sex is something easy to just do and get is so false.
I know.
It's so false. And if people think that's the way it is, then they're just wrong.
Yeah, or they just don't know enough about it, which is literally what like ASAP signs everything about. Like ignorance is what makes people not tolerant. So it's like if people just need to be educated. Like even if someone was friends with a lot of gay guys over a long period of time, that straight girl will likely know a lot more about anal sex and probably be less grossed out by it.
And maybe like, she'll even try it at home.
Exactly. Like everyone has a butthole. It's an option for everyone, and it feels good.
I would say you have a perfectly good like clitoris. I would enjoy that.
Yeah.
But like also, put it in your butt.
Yeah, no, you have lots of options.
I'm just like kind of jealous that you guys don't have to use your buttholes because it hurts.
I know. Well, that's only because you're 28. It didn't hurt you when you were younger, apparently.
Can't just sit on dicks like I used to.
No longer
Title
verse.
of ep.
So no longer verse, but we're verse on this subject. Thank you so much, Matt, for weighing in on this and being like open and personal. And
I'm so open.
You can find him on Grindr. You can find him.
Oh my God, no! And if you ever find me and you see my face, yep, that's me.
Again, Las Culturistas. Make sure you're listening. We love the podcast. It's amazing. I feel like I'm like in the home of it right now, and it's making me feel honored and giddy. And just thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Peace.